I'm not used to the side mic, so I might be a little off-put. Another disclaimer is this is a newish talk, especially after seeing what other people had to present. I want to make sure you guys get something a little different and unique. So this is going to be a fun adventure. Is everyone having a good time so far? I know we're approaching end of day. Yeah? Cool. Hopefully everyone has their beverages. Yes. I'm trying to identify the nodders ahead of time. That's what I'm doing, because you guys are going to save me. All right. So domain-driven design is not really used enough. I think I'm talking to the right crowd when I say that. Doesn't need to be in every project, but it sure would be great if the knowledge we're sharing and learning and fine-tuning and everything were more places or more easily accessible by teammates, right? People understand, aren't intimidated. That said, I'm going to do a bit of a bold statement, as presenters do. I don't think it's a hot take. My apologies. But I don't think that not just DDD is used enough, but event sourcing isn't used enough. A lot of folks say, oh, isn't event sourcing just an audit log? It's meant for telemetry, auditing, those types of things. I think it can be used a lot of places. I'm not here to win you over too much in that regard. I want to kind of show some use cases, some examples, and also make the hot take, this is the hot take, that if data is an asset to your organization, is it? Yeah, okay. Why aren't you treating it like that? Because honestly, we're doing all sorts of crazy things. We have ETLs, CDCs, all this fancy stuff that are bandaging and triaging, and they work, but that's it. So let's talk about it, huh? All right, so even before I had the title of developer advocate, I was called an event sourcing evangelist. So here I am, but I'm here to spread that powerful data storage technique, hopefully share some techniques and open up some opportunities for everyone. So I'm going to show some other potential title names because I find it funny when people do that. So hopefully it gives you an insight as to where I'm coming from rather than talking about my achievements for 5 or 10 minutes. So we have that one. We also, how to win at event sourcing and influence people. I think everyone saw that. Effective communication. I think this is applicable to a lot of life's problems. Granted, you might not always see eye to eye with everyone, but I think most of the time, if we just learn how to communicate and gave each other the opportunity, would be good. So I didn't even pull out my clicker. Gosh. So I ordered a new clicker to be delivered today because I was a little bit embarrassed to ask someone for theirs. So that's the point of Amazon being everywhere. I could just rely on Amazon and know they would have something here by 10 a.m. That's crazy, right? It's pretty ridiculous. Last one, I believe, if I've memorized my slides correctly, DDD is something I picked up while learning event sourcing and CQRS, which is true. So that said, since I think the typical path is learning about DDD, maybe CQRS, and then event sourcing, at least that's how Greg Young's adventure went. Has anyone else been off this path, learned it like an untraditional way first before you learned about DDD? Okay, I see a couple nods. That gives me assurance. Thank you, nodders. Appreciate it. And no, yeah, we're definitely not doing live coding today, especially since I changed a few slides to hopefully provide some things that other presenters didn't. So you'll have to ask Paul and the organizers, I suppose, for a round 2 of live coding. Or check out my Twitch channel or YouTube channel, right? Supposed to advertise those. I just launched a YouTube channel. I'm definitely not a content creator, but hi, I'm Erik. I'm not the other Erik. I'm Erik Shafer. I'm at Event Store. I'm a developer advocate there. Yes, Phalor is an Elvish name, in case you were wondering. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, it's going to be a bit more informal. I can probably say a couple swears, bad words on there. And if I can react, right, to things immediately, perhaps. But I want to show event sourcing more. That's my goal. That's why I'm here. That's the TLDR. All right. I really should have that clicker set up. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, if you couldn't tell by my OPE t-shirt in a Metallica font. So yeah, I drove here through the storm. That was pretty great. Don't recommend it at all. And there's my cat, because I have to pay the cat tax. Have any other presenters paid the cat tax, or do I need to? Oh, okay. We'll get on it. No worries. But yeah, let's go ahead and make sure I don't forget things. So I labeled it past Erik because it would be wrong to say old Erik because he was younger than me. Now, I see a lot of nodders. That means you guys probably already know event sourcing because you can go through time all real well. So I think it's going to be a really short presentation. If you understand that, you are good. You are A-okay. Yeah, all right, what did past Erik say? All right, yeah, we're going to be giving out an Oro plushie. So Oro is short for Ouroboros, the serpent that eats its own tail, or dragon. And yeah, that QR code will be at the end. So if you need to doze off or whatever, but at the end, we're going to have the QR code for feedback, also location details on an event we're hosting at 7 p.m. at Tarantulas. I don't know why I'm hesitant to that word. More details at the end. Other folks will announce it. Yeah, there we go. Cool. All right, my nodders, where are you at? Who is currently using whatever that means, DDD? Okay. I wasn't sure how, look, I can walk with this, how much exploring like the audience would be doing with DDD, because a lot of the conversations I've had over the years, because I haven't been a developer for like decades or anything, not technically, unless you count a Pokemon website from '99. A lot of folks don't even know what DDD is. So a lot of my conversations are just trying to spin up the idea that, yeah, you should give a crap about your code. Is anyone familiar with Derek Martin? He does a lot of YouTube channels, yeah. I think he says DDD is just giving a crap, which he uses another word, but I love that. I think it's wonderful. What about event sourcing? Time wizards, I see. Probably, maybe, yeah. Cool. What about, why did I leave that in there? Has anyone just fiddled around, like not production level, just kind of looked at it? Okay, cool. Great, great, great. You guys are my target audience. CQRS, we'll talk about it a little bit. Who's familiar with CQRS? Geez, okay. So I'm going to assume folks know who Greg Young is, blah, blah, blah. If you're from Omaha, anyone else? Awesome. You know there's a Greg Young Chevrolet dealer. And I love, whenever I drive by a rental car from Greg Young, I will send him a screenshot of that. And I think it's hilarious, and I don't know why I didn't add it to my slides. If you know, you know. All right, and what about EDA? Who's using EDA type principles? Man, I should have been more aware you guys would be in the know and do all this cool stuff. What about streaming capabilities? Okay. That is, I asked that because the talk was going to go in a slightly different direction. And if we have time, I might reveal why I want to make this connection, but I just didn't think this might be the audience for that. It'll be a future talk. We'll talk to Paul about it. All right, I've yammered long enough. Okay. So disclaimer, anything I mention, I may have or may not have tweaked the name, how things work, stuff like that, right? So yeah, retcons. I know you all know what retcons are. And the situation, what do we have? Well, let's give some context. The company that I was at started at 2018. Literally started in the garage. I put an asterisk there because that is what I was told, and that's the story I'm going with. Started by a guy who effectively just repaired electronics and laptops, things like that. GPUs as well. The only reason I know he sold GPUs at one point, like an AMD Radeon 9800 Pro, is because my team was in charge of all the listings. I got to see all sorts of goodies on there. And also that company sold a lot of car speakers. This is how they got their start. It's how he made a living, and it grew. It grew, it grew, it grew, and he effectively hired a friend that was IT. That means he could code a little bit, could code a little bit of Visual Basic, which is a .NET language. I'll come up. And that's how the business, got going. So they finally got enough, what's the term that's good for this? They got enough money, right, to hire more folks. That means a new code base. That means a new coding language. Granted, it's still .NET, but who's been in that situation where you're maybe at a startup of like 1, 2, 3 people, and things just, it's like my talk. Just go the other direction. You don't few months ago, you thought it was going this way. As you start writing and scripting and things, it goes the other way. It's rough. It's rough out there. So they called this M2, which stood for, anyone want to guess? The monolith 2. Very, very smart. I love it. So in 2024, it's something we would call a modular monolith. I'm sure someone could correct me in the crowd. I'm sure a lot of folks could correct me in the crowd, honestly. But they refer to it as a CSC. Does anyone, or CS? Why am I up here? Okay. SCS. Does anyone know what that means? That, yes, self-contained system. I actually had to Google it because I couldn't remember. I just remember it being in part of a lot of my onboarding material. But I'm going to do a hot take, I don't like that phrase, and say it's effectively a modular monolith of sorts. There's different, I didn't cite it on this page, but there's a good page, I think it's enoch.com, that has more details on it. But effectively it's a modular monolith of sorts. That's how the company got going, as they hired 5, 10, 15, 20 developers. So were they over-architecting right off the bat? No, and this is where I need to be very clear that a lot of what I'm saying, again, some details have changed, but I'm just kind of smushing the story of about 8 years, because we're not here to talk about the history of an e-commerce company like that. Going to try and hit some interesting points that relate to DDD and event sourcing. So the business was really doing well. That's why they were hiring developers en masse. They decided to go with an SCS, design pretty early on, and it didn't do too bad. Now, earlier at breakfast, I had a death metal t-shirt on. A couple people asked what it said, so don't be surprised that there's a thrash metal album cover here. So as you all likely know, Megadeth was formed by Dave Mustaine once he was kicked out of Metallica, right? This was their debut album. I'm going to censor the first word, because if it does get put on YouTube, they're not going to like it. So, e-commerce is my business. Does anyone know the next line? And business is good. That's right. Business was very good. If I reveal accidentally this company's name, you can definitely see a lot of articles from Nebraska-related papers about how it just kind of exploded and provided a lot of opportunity for folks. Now, rather than just selling on eBay, they also opened their own marketplace. They had enough funding and money and everything to actually start renting out a warehouse pretty quickly. So they basically made their own marketplace of sorts. But again, fast forwarding, as our event sourcers are aware, they got a lot of marketplaces. When I was there, I think we had about 18 functional marketplaces hooked up, which means all sorts of fun API calls regarding content, listings, restrictions, inventory, pricing, content, images, media, metadata. I should have listed these things. That's okay. I'm probably going to scold my slides a whole lot. But these are the big ones currently as of today. So just to give you an idea, there's a lot of data and it needs to be sent out. And sometimes it needs to be curated or enhanced. Enriched even. That's what the CDC and ETL folks love to say. We're enriching the data, which to me, and this is the crux of it all, is a little concerning. Why isn't your data good enough initially, or at least have enough context? And I think that's kind of where my interest in DDD started to come up when I learned, and we'll go into it, when I learned that we probably should do an event sourcing and CQRS type system. I'm skipping ahead a little bit. I realized, okay, we need to make sure we do this data justice. And we're going to cover that here shortly. I hit next. Okay, cool. Yeah, so in a few years, there were a lot of warehouses that were being rented out. One was actually built, which is, holy moly, that is expensive to build a fulfillment center. And nowadays they have, I couldn't find the screenshot of Canada, but Canada is covered for the most part. And this last year they opened up in Germany and the UK a few years ago. So they're doing work. They're doing work. So if I go back a little bit, I can't give numbers, obviously, but Amazon's a huge part of the business. And I wasn't clear on this, but this is a company that, just like in their initial roots, where they were selling on eBay, they're selling on Amazon, they're selling on Walmart, they're selling on Target now. Does that make sense? I don't think I was very clear on that. Cool. So multi-channel facet. sometimes called a marketplace channel accelerator partner or something. Those names get lost. So yeah, there was a small amount of teams at one time, then lots of teams, bada boom, bada bing, and there was an inevitable reorganization. There were a few, but we're crunching things here. We're aggregating, right? I'm going to keep throwing out puns. I'm sorry. Conway's Law, I don't even know how to really describe. Did they embrace it or did they shun it? I guess it depends on what reorg I'm referring to. So we're not going to go into those details in this talk. I don't know if there's anyone who isn't familiar with Conway's Law at this point on a Friday afternoon. So, all right. So what team was I on? I was on a couple teams initially. I was also on a couple teams after this whole debacle to help set up more event sourcing systems, which is fun, but effectively, the main team I was on during this story was ingesting updates from upstream, like I mentioned. So the people who were in charge of inventory, who were in charge of pricing, who were in charge of content, things like that. Eric hit right, there we go. Restrictions, stuff like that. We basically were just told orders. Who here has heard the term command sourcing? Yeah. I don't know if I want to call it an anti-pattern. I think it has a place in some systems, I'm sure, ones that I have not worked in personally. But yeah, so basically we were just taking commands, and that's fine. We were responsible for aggregating that data and applying rules, mapping things. One of those marketplaces I showed earlier doesn't like asterisks. Don't do it. Don't call their API with an asterisk. You are asking for trouble. eBay has different requirements than Walmart and Wish and Amazon and other things. And sometimes you have a SKU. I always get that abbreviation wrong. They have an item, a SKU, that there might be 5 or 10 variations of. And each marketplace is going to have their own rules. Super fun. So what's great is that my team had to solve these problems after we got updates. We had to do direct database calls, all sorts of things I don't even want to talk about, just really nasty, gross stuff, right? So we had to cover those, take care of that responsibility. So when I say validation, mapping, and applying rules, I'm talking about like getting item update, the event, getting item ID, and then just diffing the hell out of everything, all the inventory, all the pricing, all the content. And again, if you look at who's familiar, I guess, with eBay, like all the attributes that are possible, right? Man, yeah, it's just a nightmare. I built also an XML like SOAP library for eBay that I'm very proud of. And they finally closed a GitHub issue I opened 5 years ago this last week. I didn't even plan to mention it. I totally forgot. I got a notification the other day. Super excited because their client was busted. Anyways, all right. But yeah, we basically aggregate these things. I'm going to say aggregate a lot. And we would send our updates to the downstream team. I think I'm behind on where I want to be time-wise, so we'll see what I can do here. So I like calling this system an aggregator. I think that gets a little confusing, though. You all seem very well versed on DDD and the aggregate pattern and CQRS and stuff like that. So I'm just going to say these were called the builders initially. That's what they were called. They were builders. And my team would get the data, like I mentioned, right? And we'd send it on downstream. Woo, going down to marketplace A, B, C. But I'm a liar, right? We actually sent it to another team who took care of it. We didn't take care of it after the reorg. All right, but yeah, really, we actually had to figure out that our upstream partners had their own upstream partners, adding to the complexity of everything, right? So price updates, this is my favorite example, weren't just from like a pricing team. They were very successful. I like that team. They are good people. But we also had, perhaps, maybe, I can't validate, something that looked at websites and saw what other companies price things at. Now, if you read your contracts with Amazon, eBay, and other companies, they typically say, hey, stop scraping. You're my partner. Don't do it. But, I mean, sometimes stuff happens, right? So anyways, there might be like price generators or things like that that basically tell the team what to do. I mean, potentially, right? I said I would make details up, right? So we're in a good place. And I'm not going to talk about CI/CD or anything like that, really, when it comes to this whole mishmash of what is event sourcing and why I love it, between my bad jokes. But just so you get an idea, I think the average amount of content builders we had deployed were 10, pricing was like 15 to 20 instances, and inventory, depending on the day, like if it was Black Friday or Cyber Monday, typically floated around 30. So I can't do math. We have over 50 deployments effectively, but we just accepted race conditions. We just, oh, yep, things were running into each other. Queries had inconsistent data when we're doing validation between different marketplaces, things like that, lots of false flags, and that was the norm. This wasn't in my slides, but I got hired right before Black Friday, and I was up all Black Friday solving an issue. That was the norm. That's not me saying, oh, this company sucks. No, I had a good time, and that was the reality. And I'm kind of glad I experienced it. Yeah, you guys know this. Complexity, bad. Resource contention, bad. Fire, bad. That's what Frankenstein's monster said. So have we identified the problem? There's a lot of problems. And there's only so much time in our conversation here. My goal is to go back to the data aspect, but we're going to talk about software specifically for a bit. So these are some slides that I wasn't sure if we want to keep in here. A lot of this stuff is from a fellow named Chris Condren, who worked at Event Store for a few years. Good guy, funny, pretty smart. He has this thing called Condren's Law that I need to look at. Any system with 5 or more interconnected degrees of freedom is incomprehensible. I would agree, absolutely. Especially when you have different marketplaces which have different SKUs, right? Just, it's gross. Not really going to go into this too much, but layered architecture won't save you necessarily. If you add CQRS, again, for those that don't know, commands and queries are separate. Super simple explanation, terrible explanation. This doesn't necessarily save you. I mean, it helps, it could help. It depends, right? That's our answer for everything. So yeah, there's accidental and intrinsic complexity. These are things that Chris rambled on about a few years ago and I really liked. So that's why we give him credit here. But I'm gonna keep going. So let's start tackling complexity and my speaking with event sourcing. Given everyone's answers in the crowd, I think we're gonna be good here, but real life is event-driven. I think other presenters also mentioned this. Yes, the photo was flipped because I did not, after years of using this image to describe event sourcing and event-driven things, I was sick of going from like right to left. So the other day I finally swapped it. Very happy with myself. And yeah, sometimes we have a lot of realism in our systems, maybe too much. Another presenter mentioned earlier that we should just embrace complexity. I mean, it's the big bad C word, which don't take wrong, but it's something that we just need to accept in some cases. If you have a process, if your business process is complex, that's what it is. But you need to be the one who's responsible for breaking it down, making it maintainable, understandable. Everything else that Erik, big Erik, older Erik Blue Book, Eric Evans talks about, right? That we really need to be able to tackle this thing head on, build some good strategies and tactics, and make it, again, maintainable and lovely for everyone else. I don't think he uses those words, but we'll have to ask him. So yeah, these slides, let's go over them really quick. So a lot of developers have this CRUD mentality where they, at least for me, grew up using Microsoft Excel. I remember my father got an Apple, I forget the exact model, it wasn't an Apple Mac II or Apple II. It was a Mac like E or something. But anyways, I had been seeing spreadsheets, it seems like since I was about 5 years old. I'm 36 right now. Current Erik, not past Erik. But I mean, ever since I can remember, when I think of data, I think of spreadsheets. Does anyone else kind of have that same mental model, perhaps? Couple nods, that makes me feel better. I appreciate it. But the idea of slicing data up like that isn't uncommon, despite the lack of nodding. I would say a lot of folks who maybe are newer developers, I used to do tutoring and was a teacher's assistant for years, definitely saw a lot of that. People were saying they just didn't understand what the property or a field was. And when I would basically go to a whiteboard and make a square, put lines in it, I go A to A, B to B, C to C. It's a mind-blowing moment. These people who are, these kids who are much smarter than me just needed a little nudge in the right direction, right? So a lot of folks have that mental model. And I probably should have hit forward on my slides. That's okay. We're doing all right. So here's a typical spreadsheet of products or items or product items or SKUs. Sometimes they're called all of those things. Depends on the context, right? Can have more tables. Might have to join them occasionally. And here we go with our event sourcing plug, because this audit table is not, I appreciate that, is not very robust. It might get the job done initially for that first or those 3 developers I mentioned. Not going to do the trick when Amazon is questioning why you broke an SLA for the 3rd week in a row and you realize half or something like that of your business relies on them and you need to prove everything you did because now you have thousands of jobs at stake, effectively. That's the real talk. So event sourcing in that case, great. Was it intended? Let's build an audit log so half our revenue is safe. No, that was not how this builder system I'm describing poorly. That's not why it was picked. It wasn't picked for that. But was it cool when it happened? Great. We have every state change ever down to like specifically how we deviated from the core product to Amazon and all the SKUs. It was great. It literally saved lots of money and jobs. Very proud of that. Again, like goosebumps thinking about that. That was a very proud achievement, knowing that we were able to provide that validation. So what is event sourcing? What is CQRS? Let's talk about that first. Seemed like almost the whole room nodded. So you guys are probably going to be okay with the fact that the style just changed, because I'm bad at spreadsheets. Are we okay with that? I'm not a spreadsheet developer. Nor am I a spreadsheet advocate on that note. Is this CQRS? Could be. CQRS doesn't have any hard rules about having to use separate databases, despite what LinkedIn and Twitter posts say. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I like using emojis a lot, but when I see a lot of emojis and then saying click here, I will not be that type of developer advocate. So this could be using CQRS. Commands on the left, reads on the right, probably, who knows? It depends, dare I say. Command side, well, if we're still in the e-commerce domain, in that world, we might check out whatever that entails. And we're saying, hey, let's do the thing. And all you DDD experts already know there is a wonderfully built domain model that hopefully was very curated, either through event storming or event modeling or domain storytelling, so it has the right functionality for the use case or use cases, and it does the thing, right? Easy stuff. You guys are getting tired. Does anyone prefer command side or right side when they describe these types of systems? Kind of a weird poll, just thought about it. We can talk afterwards at Tarantulas about it. Seems like a lot of folks call it something else every day. Oh, the reactive side. Oh, the right side. And then my sincerest apologies to anyone who's like, English isn't the first language, because right side is hella confusing. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's on the left side. What are you talking about? What did I just do? Yeah, so we have intent. I don't think I really need to describe this too much with this crowd. But yeah, commands are intent. Great. Sounds like we're getting to some sort of event source system pretty quickly. So let's say current Erik, let's say future Erik needs a shopping cart so he can purchase things. Okay, well, let's make a command. Great. Let's add a Legend of Zelda to the cart. Prior slides had references to Legend of Zelda. You're going to have to just take me on my word that it was really funny and well done. And let's say there's another command saying, hey, let's add product to the shopping cart. I would say add product isn't very descriptive, but it depends on your context. Maybe that's all it really needs to be called because you're very clearly in the shopping cart or basket domain. We need more baskets. I like that word. So I thought I deleted this slide. That's funny. Value objects. We all know what value objects are. Let's get some nods going. Sweet. Thank you. And maybe this is how we write it. So we want to make sure our product item that we're referencing in that command can only be made certain ways. It upholds invariance, all that fun stuff, the business rules invariance. Those are terms I didn't understand for a couple of years, it felt like. Didn't get it. Now I kind of get it. I get it enough that I'm up here and we're having a good time. But we're making sure that our command's valid because we want to make sure our data, which should be treated as a first-class citizen, is correct. We want to make sure everything we are doing upstream of command handlers has enough strength, enough, not audacity, enough of the correct formatting and tools and ubiquitous language to get to the next stage and mitigate any potential errors. Even if it's your teammate handling that other task that you just finished, they're handling part 2, and you're on the same page, you're going to go to Tarantulas after this conference and have a good time, your buddies, they still might not understand something because there was the potential for, what do you want to call it, bad code? An invariant not being held up? Yeah, I had to keep this in there. This kind of makes me chuckle. Yes, value objects. Now I'm doing DDD, absolutely. So, read side, I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time here. I need to get specific things for specific use cases. Again, hopefully you've been working with your teammates and everyone else to know what needs to be queried. So where I'm going with this, we kind of went over that already. This I feel like I could say this is my presentation right here. And maybe I'll walk off the stage and be real cool. But the fact that you are recording really granular events, and have we gone into detail there? No, that's okay. But because we have these commands and we're recording events in really granular detail, we're able to make all sorts of read models. That sounds really, really handy when you have 18 marketplaces and some of your most popular items have 10 variations. And you have different APIs that you have to send things out to. This is where I can start like rambling. This is great. And maybe one of those marketplaces is jumping between version 2 and 3 and they don't know how to do things. They're having issues internally, respectfully. And you keep having to bounce between their new JSON-related API and their XML one. And sometimes you need inventory data for content updates. Why? Because their API said so. And that's not something you can negotiate with your side of the business. That you can't go to your PO or PM or anyone else. Say, let's fix this, let's change this. Nope. That is another business that you are relying on because you are a B2B. I should have said that earlier, if that wasn't clear. Business to business. And those are constraints that you have. That's just life. I think we all can relate to that to some degree or another, depending on the day, right? Oh man, what do we have to work around today? What do we have to do? Can we change it? Can we discuss and communicate any adjustments that can be done? Or workarounds. I don't like that word. It's like a bad word. But does this make sense where if you record granular data well, uphold invariance, that you can produce all sorts of things for different downstream consumers? Cool. So I don't have a very good slide describing how we came to the conclusion of using event sourcing, but this effectively was it. This, knowing that having the ability to be very reactive. Let me go to the next slide, actually. Saw a couple photos. You're not what I thought was there, gosh. See, this is what you get when I haven't done this presentation like 20 times. It's a new presentation. We're working through it. Okay, here we go. So we have our writes, which is on the left, and we have our reads on the right. We could also put it another way. We could say we have the source of truth, our events, our granular data that we treat well because it pays our bills on the left side. And then we have a reactive side. I haven't used this term reactive side until I got to Event Store. If anyone knows, well, there's 2 Eves now at Event Store. but we can blame them. But I really like it because one thing that we realized when we started building this new version of the builders at this anonymous e-commerce company I was at was that we could react to different updates being written to our database. Now, I think there were a couple people asking yesterday, it's like, well, what's the difference between Event Store DB and other things? It's a really big topic, not going to get into it specifically right now, but if you don't have to write a bunch of extra code or if your library or framework doesn't have it, and obviously there are serverless options that do this, but you should be able to react to things quickly and well. If that's a pulling mechanism compared to a pushing mechanism from the database, then so be it. That's okay. I'm used to, who's used Martin on top of Postgres? A couple hands. That is, I meant to say this earlier, but that's actually where I have most of my experience when it comes to event sourcing. So I got onboarded to events to look at how things are being done here. And it's been a very interesting journey because I'm like, oh, that's different. Did I learn event sourcing wrong? Or is it just APIs and names and functions and features that don't have full parity because they're different? Okay, so it's been a really interesting journey personally, but you should be able to react to things. So when inventory hits, I'm going to say 4, but it might be a dynamic value. When inventory of a very popular item hits 4 in a specific warehouse in a specific region, I'm just dashing complexity on this use case. Maybe there needs to be an alert sent out to the brand or vendor manager saying, hey, we need to procure is the word when you receive it. We need to procure more of this. Maybe it's worthwhile to automate that because you have a really good relationship with that vendor and you can just send out some API call or do an email. Sometimes business processes are done by email. And that's really handy because minimal downtime, right? Save a couple minutes, save a couple hours, save a day or a weekend if the person's out. Really powerful. And I feel like I could talk for hours about this with this slide up. Does this make sense when it comes to having a mechanism, whether you're pushing or pulling? With Event Store DB, it's telling you, which is really nice, gRPC, all that good stuff. Language agnostic. I'll talk to you more about ESDB if you want later. But there's other ways to do that as well. To say, hey, I really need to listen for inventory updates on this item or that, or these certain streams of data. And I haven't really even talked about different streams, but let's say we have a content-related and an inventory-related stream. And for whatever reason, there's some sort of relationship between the two in a specific scenario. Let's say I'll name drop Walmart. Walmart's APIs are heck for a while. And you need to be aware of when one updates so you can update the other. You can do that with projections. Just listen to both the streams. That's the kind of stuff when it comes to, in my opinion, event sourcing you should be able to do natively or very easily. What is native? What is innate? I don't know. I'm thinking about some college professors scolding at me saying, don't ever use the word innate in my human-computer interactions course. Or easy to use. So yeah, I didn't even mention, but if you need to write to different databases, great functionality. I wrote a blog recently about Postgres that even though I come from a Martin background, I still love Postgres. I use Postgres all the time, whether it's on Azure or AWS for read models. I have that relational capabilities in there. I have their awesome JSON-B, binary JSON support. If I want to write something like a document, pretend it's Mongo or Dynamo or Cosmo or Cosmos. Look at that, I should have hit forward. I apologize. But what we did, and I didn't create slides for this because it would just be really boring, I think, is that we were able to create separate services that we ended up having as a single deployable because it was easier to ingest everything from content, inventory, all those other teams I mentioned. We were able to basically create services. There was an anti-corruption layer of sorts. Me and the other architect called it that, but we didn't use that term with the rest of the team because they weren't big proponents of DDD terminology. I don't know who hurt them, but that's just how it is sometimes. It's like, okay, well, let's use this pattern or idea, and we'll just use this name. Who's familiar with Process Manager? and sagas. I just wish saga encapsulated all of it. What a cool word. Also, epic's cool, but Jira kind of, never mind. So yeah, treat your data well, have well-orchestrated commands, as we saw through my excellent code, not live code. Record them as domain events. Not going to get into the discussion of what is a domain event here. And in this instance, we were able to create all sorts of notifications, alerts. We had a lot of things hooked up to our PagerDuty and open telemetry and everything. It just became really easy once we understood, after we got through the hurdle of what is a stream, how do we define a good stream, what should be in this stream. Because, and I haven't, for those that know, you know, but we put everything into like 4 streams initially. Has anyone had really long streams or like clogged? Like, yeah. So not fun. So if you come from like a data streaming or events streaming world and deal with things being convoluted and bloated, same idea applies. But yeah, once we kind of understood how we should divide these things and we did event storming sessions, we were able to collaborate more with folks and determine, oh, okay, like this command really probably is going to do this process and like 3 events might be written. Oh, should we have them on the same stream or not? What's listening to that stream? Because we were able to have those discussions, and I am talking pretty high level right now, but it just drove this thing to the next level. Now, we're kind of coming up on time here, but what I want to say, I don't think we need to go over this. Who's familiar with Oscar? My buddy Oscar from Poland. Yes. Awesome guy, wonderful resource if you go to event-driven.io. I have it on the last slide. Awesome blogs, amazing. So whenever I get something wrong or I implement something poorly, I actually blame him. He's my mentor for better or worse. But that's his definition of an event. There are types of messages they can be ignored on the reactive side, right? Hey, look, a Walmart update. I'm not the Walmart reader, don't care. Like how revolutionary is that? You just record facts, that's all you do. Well, let's kind of skip ahead a little bit. I do want to mention that all this stuff becomes fairly deterministic, which is awesome. This is a shopping cart example, which I just can't break away from. But if you know the paths that could happen, it's awesome. If you have items in a cart and on your reactive side, this is another discussion, and you have it go for 10 or 12 hours saying, oh, there's items in the cart. Why are there items in the cart? Then you could maybe build some reactive service to shoot an email out or say, hey, if you buy this in the next 24 hours, we'll give you 10% off. You can build all those functionalities that we normally do with batch jobs. It's pretty great. So lots of determinism once you have nice granular events in streams, and those streams can be reacted to. So when I said earlier, I'm not really going to talk too much about streaming. There's some other companies that are influential, confluential to our industry, and they talk about how we're in the era of streaming. And I agree, but that's usually from a messaging aspect. I really want past tense or forward tense. Which one conveys more confidence? I want to hopefully educate folks more that streaming is here, okay, but we can do it at the application level, and we can treat our data better, storing it in streams and react to it. And if you need to use some great message broker service to help coordinate things across the organization, then yeah, use that. But in that like application level, there's some really great performance and benefits that can be had with something that's specifically about persisting data forever for that application, bounded context, whatever words you want to throw out, and working off of that rather than something else that you're saying, hey, be durable forever, and you have to go through the entire log. I mean, there's hacks, right? I'm not trying to bash a specific product, but hopefully you get what I mean. We talked about event storming. Did anyone do any event storming related workshops? I missed out this time. I'm really sad. I didn't feel well earlier. Event storming is awesome. Huge credit to this product's success for that. Oh, you aren't supposed to be slow. Let's go, come on. So point being is that I talked about like 50 different deployables and how it could be even more, and we just kind of embraced resource contention, and we would rerun processes. Well, let's just rerun the inventory count again for the umpteenth time. We went down to one deployable. We didn't go to event sourcing for some audit log or telemetry data. We used it for that, which was awesome. But we used it really for performance and for the reactive read side. It just worked really well for us. So here is, I think, the last example. Read models. Maybe I don't care about this entire stream. These are different events belonging to a single stream. And we want to have some sort of projection or dashboard thingy for someone because they're important and they ask nicely. And they're going to go to tarantulas later, and we're going to have some beverages. It'll be great. Well, I don't need to listen to these other events like MSRP adjusted, map adjusted, sell price adjusted. Oh no, why did you do? Well, those are supposed to vanish, and your projection, your read model effectively is only using the events that you care about. So if that didn't make sense earlier about custom read models, like I am not going to listen to Walmart updates for my Amazon updates. Does that make sense? That's the simplest thing I can say, just name drop them. I'm not going to talk about this too much. Oh, there you are. Why are you doing over here, buddy? Come on now. Well, let's also skip to the last point here. There's patterns if you're worried about, hey, what if this stream's incorrect? It's not right, we need to change our business language or whatever. Great, copy it over, whatever. Not a big deal. You all have seen this quote, yeah? Give me some nods. Let's finish strong. Let's finish strong. Here are some resources. I Love Logs is great. Check that out. And I can go back to the other one if needed, but there is that QR code if you want to win an Oro plushie. There's the community meetup. I think Paul's going to talk about it again, 7 o'clock tarantulas. There are some URLs that you can harass me at. Hopefully my YouTube video comes out Monday talking about my adventure here. And I want to thank you for your time. Thank you.